Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Old Time Rock and Roll. I'm your host, David Tear, where I've been featuring my personal top 3,000 songs of the rock era from 1954 to 1999. And today I'm up to song number 2562, and that one is Honey Honey by ABBA. And this was released in 1974, and went to number 27 in the United States, but it also hit the top 40 in 15 other countries. ABBA were a huge international sensation, as I'm sure you guys all know. They were from Sweden. I'm not going to do an entire profile on ABBA since I've already featured a few of their songs. This song was also released on their second album entitled Waterloo, which also I believe had their hit Waterloo. And I think Waterloo, that was the first number one, at least the first number one in Sweden as well as several other European countries. That one's coming in much, much higher on my list. Not going to say how high. You'll have to wait and see about 7 years. But anyway, I really like the group ABBA. A lot of people don't. But here's a picture of the ABBA around the time they recorded Honey Honey. And I think I should just say one more thing about, I mentioned Waterloo. Waterloo was the song Waterloo, which was featured on this album Waterloo, was also featured on Eurovision, and it won the Eurovision contest in 1974. It kind of put ABBA in the limelight, at least in Europe. They were a huge sensation in Europe and a lot of the rest of the world, and they didn't do well in America. I don't know why, but they said, I think they said at some point in their history that they considered America their only failure in the world, which is a little ironic in a way because they were pretty big in America, not huge like they were in Europe, but they had a number one. I think Dancing Queen went to number one. There was only number one in America. Not my favorite of theirs, but it did go to number one here. They had several other top 10 hits, and they had several top 40s. I mean, they were a pretty big group in America, but just not as huge as they were internationally. I'd say in America they were more about on par with ELO maybe or Foreigner. I don't know. I mean, moderately successful group in America, I'd say, and one of the first disco groups. Maybe one reason they're not so popular here is they kind of ushered in a way the disco era. And I know a lot of people hate disco, and disco did get overplayed. Don't get me wrong. I mean, by 1979, I hated disco too, like just about everybody else that I knew. There was just too much of it. But disco wasn't bad. I mean, now it's not even bad to listen to some disco songs every now and then. It was all you heard in 1979, and so no wonder it was making people crazy. But I mean, it wasn't a bad genre of music, and I think ABBA was among the best disco groups of all time. I really like ABBA. I'm standing by that. I don't care what anybody says. And I know a lot of people hate him. I mean, even the Rolling Stone magazine bashed him. They said, I remember, I read a book, it was The History of Rock and Roll by Rolling Stone, and they said that they thought ABBA was one of the worst groups of all time. I thought that was a really, really vain thing for them to say and a really inappropriate thing for them to say. And I didn't even agree with them, even at the time. I don't know what their thing was. I guess they had some editor that didn't like them for some reason. But I think they're a really good group. I think their music is very catchy, not very deep, granted that. I mean, especially this song, Honey Honey. They're the early songs. I'd say most of their songs from around 1974 to around 1978. They really didn't have much depth to them at all. I'll grant you that. If there were a few exceptions, like Fernando, I think Fernando was about some political struggle somewhere, and I'm not sure exactly where in Mexico, I think. There were some sort of deep songs by ABBA, but most of them weren't so deep. They were just more catchy. But, there's a lot of that in America, too. Don't forget that. I mean, look at most of the stuff from the 50s and early 60s. Look at songs like It's My Party by Leslie Gore. I mean, I don't think, that was any less deep than ABBA's early songs. So get a hold of yourselves. I think they were a really good group, and they were also very sexy. At least the women in the group were. So I still like ABBA. And maybe I'm not as crazy about them as a lot of Europeans, but I do feature a total of 13 of their songs on my list. This is, I think, the third, so I've still got 10 more coming up, including a couple I already mentioned. So anyway, not too much to say about the song "Honey, Honey." It is a kind of stupid song. I mean, it's really just kind of a like a young girl's plea of love for her this boy she's really interested. Honey, honey, you really kill me. You really thrill me. I heard it from you before. You're a love machine. I mean, but so what? I mean, men have been singing songs like this ever since the beginning of rock and roll. Why can't women do the same? I don't have a problem with that at all. And, I mean, 30, 40 years ago, if I had the chance, I would have easily gotten involved with the women in this group, and I would have been very happy to do so. But what can I do? Maybe I'm a dreamer. They were already multimillionaires, and I was just a struggling young boy trying to cope with what was going on. So anyway, enough of all that. But anyway, I think that complete. Oh, there's just one more thing I want to mention. This was the first song featured in this movie called Mamma Mia, which I'm sure you guys have all heard of. I mean, this was a hugely popular movie. I thought the movie was way overrated. I thought it was a really crazy story, actually. I mean, this girl on her island, she doesn't even know who her real father is. She's basically illegitimate. So she has three men who she doesn't know which one's her father. She only knows it's one out of three. So she wants all three of them to give her away at her wedding. Very concocted story. I don't think something like that could really happen in real life. And if it did, I'm sure there'd be a lot more drama involved than they presented in the movie. So I wasn't crazy about the movie Mamma Mia, though I did really enjoy the music in it. I'm also not a big fan of Meryl Streep. I actually think this is one of Meryl Streep's better movies. You'll be happy to know that, Meryl. There were a few movies I saw you in that I did like you in, including this one. I think my favorite movie with Meryl Streep was Defending Your Life. Most of the other movies I saw with Meryl Streep, I really didn't care for. You might as well know I hated Kramer versus Kramer. That's a horrible movie. And she was a horrible backstabbing bitch in that, as she is in a lot of her other movies, including, what's the other one? Manhattan, where she dumps Woody Allen for another woman. She decides to become a lesbian and gets custody of his son and raises him like a feminine boy. I mean, what's the good in that? And she writes a book about him, bashing him. You know, pretty horrible woman in that movie too. She's good at playing horrible roles like that. So I'm not a big fan of Meryl Streep. But anyway, enough of that. Anyway, that completes my profile on Honey Honey by ABBA. Thank you for watching. You guys rock, and I'll see you next time. Bye.